What if old Pokemon regions got new starter Pokemon? Like, what if we got a new game in an old region or something, and they just gave us completely new starter Pokemon? This isn't something that has ever happened before, but it's a really interesting idea in my opinion, which is why I'm going to be exploring it in this video by creating some new starters of my very own for some of the older Pokemon regions. So let's go ahead and check it out. So this video and all its Fakemon have been made possible in part thanks to today's amazing sponsor, Manscaped, and their new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Now that we're in 2024, we all naturally want to have an amazing year, and that all starts with you feeling fresh, clean, and on point, which Manscaped can help you do. It all begins with the Lawnmower 5.0 razor. This razor straight up comes from the future, as it is equipped with skin-safe technology to prevent nicks and cuts. It's got interchangeable blade heads, a built-in LED light with multiple color settings to help you spot those pesky hairs that try to avoid you, and it's also cordless and even waterproof. Also in this package is the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer, which is also amazing, and you also get the Crop Preserver and Crop Soother deodorant and aftershave lotion in this package as well. And you even get 2 free gifts with it too. Manscaped's Anti-Chafing Boxers 2.0 and their new and improved Shed 2.0 travel bag. You can even get all of this for 20% off with free shipping when you use the link in the description below and code HoopsVGM at checkout. And it also helps to support the channel as well, so it's like the best deal ever. And I've also got to say too, just as an FYI, that Valentine's Day is coming up as well, so this is a great way to make sure you look your best for all of those upcoming Valentine's Day dates that are on the horizon. So again, give that a look with the link below, and a big thank you to Manscaped for supporting the channel. Okay, so we're going to be checking out some new starters that I have created for the Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn regions. The artwork of these starters was drawn by my good friend Deims Fakemon, so be sure to check him out with the links in the description because he does great work. And with that said, let's get into it and begin with Kanto. Now, the cool thing with the older regions with this idea is that they didn't really have as much of a concrete theme with their starters as the newer regions do with theirs. So we can essentially look at these older regions with the standard that the newer gens have for their starters and create some really cool starter Pokemon. So, for example, Kanto has a big technology theme, and a new set of Kanto starters that uses this theme as well would be really cool. So that is what I have gone ahead and done for my new Kanto starters, and the first one is the Grass Starter Bumbun. This is obviously a cute little bunny starter, and it's based around a cottontail rabbit in particular, hence the grass type and literal cottontail. This also inspires the name because Bumbun comes from bunny and bum, as in its bum, which has a big fluffy cotton tail attached to it, which is obviously a big part of its design. You might be wondering though how this is going to connect to the technology theme. Well, I don't want to give away too much because I could possibly explore the evolutions of these guys in a future video, but it would eventually incorporate the technology vibes as it evolves by becoming a grass electric type that has a TV theme, which would be inspired by rabbit ears, which is another name for a TV antenna. So overall, I think this starter could actually be really cool, especially as it starts to evolve and gains those more technological traits. The fire starter of this bunch, meanwhile, is a little snake Pokemon known as Slizzle. First of all, it's a snake because of the Chinese zodiac. Yes, I am going back to that trend, but it also kinda works since the actual Kanto Starters are based around animals that kids could have as pets, and snakes are certainly animals that you could have as a pet as well. To tie into the technology theme though, Slizzle is also based on a heating coil, which fits with its slithery, snaky body, and is something that to my understanding is used in a variety of different technologies that generate heat for various reasons. The name Slizzle is also really nice in my opinion too, because it comes from slither, as in what a snake does, and sizzle, which refers to the fire typing that it has, since a sizzle is what you get when you cook food. The word sizzle is also defined as a hissing sound that is made when frying or cooking, and this wraps back around to snakes since snakes hiss, and a snake hiss actually does sound a lot like the sizzling of food, so this design actually comes together pretty well in my opinion. Lastly, the water starter of this new Kanto trio is Chimpond, a water monkey Pokemon. This comes from the concept of sea monkeys, which are novelty aquarium pets, going along with that pet theme once again, and are in reality brine shrimp and not actual apes or monkeys, meaning that this is a more literal interpretation of the sea monkey's name. This also gives us a water monkey starter to go along with the grass and fire monkey starters that we already have, so it completes that trio too, which I also think is kinda neat. The name Chimpond factors this in as well, because it comes from chimp, obviously, but also child, since it's a first stage Pokemon, and even shrimp, alluding to its sea monkey brine shrimp origin. Pond also factors into the name as well to represent its water typing, and it also represents its status as a young Pokemon by being named after a small body of water. Finally, the technology theme would factor into this Pokemon by coming out in its evolutions, as Chimpond would eventually evolve into a Water Steel superhero-based Pokemon that would loosely be based around Iron Man. And this is due to the fact that sea monkeys were heavily marketed in comic books in the 1960s and 70s, so even that element has a legit inspiration to it as well, making for a Pokemon that comes together pretty well in my opinion. Maybe someday we'll explore those evolutions in a future video, but for now, those are what new Kanto Starters could be like. Who would you pick? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, as we now go ahead and move on to the new Johto Starters. Johto, in contrast to Kanto, has a huge focus on history as well as a theme of time and the passage of it, which is represented by the day and night mechanic being introduced in this gen, as well as the mythical time-traveling Pokemon, Celebi. So that is going to be the theme for these starters, and it starts with the grass-type starter, Burblossom. I love this one because I think it came together really well. Not only does it look really cute, but it's also based on a cherry blossom, which are very iconic and well known in Japan, where Johto is based. Not to mention, they're also a symbol of spring. And what else is a symbol of spring? Baby animals and them being born, like baby birds for instance, just like Burblossom. Spring also represents a new beginning, and this brings in the time factor for these Pokemon. Burblossom would represent the passage of time in its evolutions, by each stage representing a different season. So it represents spring, the middle evolution would represent summer, and the final evolution would be themed after fall. It would also gain the flying type and be grass flying in its evolutions, which it does not have as Burblossom since it's a baby bird who naturally can't fly just yet. This is one that I really hope to be able to create the evolutions for at some point, because I love this concept. Lastly though, let's go ahead and break down the name of Burblossom. The name Burblossom comes from bird, and more specifically the more wholesome sounding burb, as well as the blossom that it is based on. So that is Burblossom for you, but with that said, let's go ahead now and move on to Johto's new fire starter, and that would be Gruntot. Gruntot is based on the ox of the Chinese zodiac, which is obviously a pretty straightforward inspiration at this point for a fire starter, so the more interesting part about this Pokemon is the whole time element of this design. The way that Gruntot ties into this concept is by also being based on a caveman, and more specifically, the idea of the discovery of fire. This is where its fire type comes in as well, so it's not just slapped onto this ox Pokemon for no reason, and the idea is that as Gruntot evolves, it would literally evolve and go from a caveman to something more evolved and sophisticated, encapsulating the concept of real-life evolution, which is another representation of the passage of time. The name Gruntot, meanwhile, factors in these elements too, since it comes from grunt, which illustrates the caveman theme since they are often shown to speak in grunts, tot, as in a small child, coming from the fact that it's a young Pokemon, and stot, which is apparently a name used for a baby ox. That describes Gruntot pretty well though, so let's go ahead and look at the new water starter for Johto now. This is Bubblish, and it is a jellyfish Pokemon. Now, this one was pretty tricky to put together, I'll be honest with you, because with water starters, it's gotta be something that can be a water type, but also naturally survive on land. Not to mention, it's also gotta work with all of the other themes that we're trying to incorporate here. That is how Bubblish came into existence, as it is based on the immortal jellyfish, a species of jellyfish that is in fact biologically immortal, and that is how this guy would show off the time theme, as it would display how the passage of time would not affect its age or mortality. Of course, jellyfish aren't exactly lovers of the land, so that is where the bubble head comes in, as I imagined that the main body of a jellyfish could be like a bubble for this Pokemon that allows it to breathe and walk around on land, and that could be one of its main signature abilities. So, it was a challenging mon to create overall, but I think it turned out pretty cute, and those are the new Johto Starters for you. A pretty fun bunch if I do say so myself, but the best trio of the video, in my opinion, is the new Hoenn trio. So let's go ahead and check them out. Hoenn is a pretty tropical place, and its theme is very much a theme of nature and the delicate balance of the ecosystem. So these new Hoenn starters that I have created attempt to capture that and represent the variety of environments and ecosystems that we have on Earth. First, the grass starter of this bunch is Nanakan, and it is an adorable little toucan Pokemon. Nanakan is meant to represent the more tropical climates of the world, and does so by being based on a toucan, which, at least to me anyway, is probably the most iconic and well-known tropical animal that there is, so I felt it was a good representation of this idea. It also features a theme of bananas, since bananas are a bit more tropical as well, even though they're a pretty standard fruit at this point too. That is partly how the grass type comes into play with this Pokemon as well, and as a toucan, it is also a flying type, and therefore is a grass flying type, and gets to be one of those rare first stage starters with two types. The name of Nanakan, meanwhile, comes from banana and toucan, as you may have already been able to surmise, and overall, I think it's a pretty adorable fella. This isn't my favorite trio of the video though, just because of Nanakan, oh no, because the other starters are pretty great too if I do say so myself. Meet Capyro, the fire starter of this new Hoenn trio. It is based on a goat, going along with the zodiac theme once again, and it is meant to represent the desert biome, going along with the previously discussed nature theme. It would accomplish this by eventually evolving into a desert bighorn sheep, which hopefully we'll be able to cover later, and those hot desert vibes are also how it gets the fire type too. A fun little detail that Deims Fakemon added in with these guys as well is that the color of their eyes represent the type in the trio that they are strong against. So Capyro has green eyes and Nanakan has blue eyes, for example. Finally, the name Capyro comes from pyro, meaning fire, since it's a fire type, and Capra, the genus of animals that goats belong to. And with Capyro and Nanakan now covered, let's go ahead and look at Hoenn's new water starter, and it is none other than Riverrunt, the aquatic bear Pokemon. Just like Bubblish from before, this one was the trickiest of the bunch. I guess water starters are just the hardest ones to design, but it was also because it had to fit all of those water starter criteria that we talked about before, while also fitting in with the nature theme. And I thought that the biome of Earth that would be the most distinctive and therefore the best for this Pokemon and would also fit it the best was the Arctic biome, essentially meaning that this Pokemon would eventually evolve into a part Ice type, but as a first stage starter Pokemon, it couldn't be Ice type quite yet, and had to just be pure Water type in its first stage. That was the dynamic that led to Riverrunt, and here is how I ultimately accomplished it. Riverrunt is based on a polar bear to represent that Arctic theme. And polar bears also spend a lot of time in the water, and were also once known as sea bears, which helps to justify the water type. The water type also comes from a bit of a pun, since this Pokemon is also taking just a bit of inspiration from the micro animal known as the water bear, making it sort of a more literal interpretation of the animal like we did before with Chimpond. However, it does directly utilize one element of the water bear, and that is its extremely small size. Riverrunt was designed to basically look like a small child that's all bundled up for the winter, and that would be an element that would ultimately be expanded upon as it evolved, and eventually gained the Ice type. So Riverrunt is meant to be particularly small looking outside of just being a first stage Pokemon, and it also represents this with its name as well. Riverrunt comes from runt, referring to it as an especially small Pokemon, river, which connects to its water typing, and shiver, representing the clothes element of the design as if it is shivering, which is why it has to bundle up. This also helps to connect it to its later evolutions that will eventually gain that Ice typing, but as of right now, that part of the name is kind of hidden within the larger name as a whole, meaning that it's also acting as a sort of sign of what's to come later on for this Pokemon's evolutions. That is the new Hoenn trio for you though, and that is what it could be like if older Pokemon regions got new starter Pokemon. Which of these starters would you pick from each group? And is new starters in an old region something you would like to see happen in a future Pokemon game? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this, because I think it would be a fun topic to cover. Leave a like and subscribe as well if you haven't yet for more, and if you want to support the channel further, you can also listen to my Pokemon remixes over on Spotify, as well as other music streaming services, which helps out a ton and is very much appreciated. With that said, I'll be back soon with another new video, and until then, as always, thanks so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.